Welcome back everyone, it is Aric from Aric, and today we're going to be checking out my current list for the very hyped new Darkrai VSTAR deck that's coming out in the upcoming Astral Radiance set. I've been having actually a really good bit of fun trying this thing out since it is kind of similar to some older fan favorite Darkrai decks from the past. So I've been very curious to see if this archetype is going to live up to the legacy of its predecessor. And I've been having a lot of fun experimenting with different directions for this archetype too. So even after this video, if you guys are hungry for some more Darkrai VSTAR content, I actually dropped a bonus article on Patreon detailing some additional cards and tech options you could potentially include in your Darkrai VSTAR decks, along with a bonus list that is actually a good bit different for this one as well. So links to that will be down below in the description for you to check out. But getting into the list that we're showing off today, let's hop in. Up first, of course, we do have 4 copies of Darkrai V. Not a whole lot to really say about this card. The first attack for a Darkened Colorist is 50, and the second attack for 2 Darkened Colorist is 130, and puts your opponent to sleep. But of course, up next from there, we have the Big Daddy himself. We got Darkrai VSTAR. So this is going to be its evolution, 270 HP, Grass weakness, which may potentially be a problem after Astral Radiance. We'll have to wait and see, but Grass is definitely getting some big support to watch out for. But the big attraction to Darkrai is this first attack for 2 Colorist energy. It does 30 plus 30 more for each dark energy that you have in play. So same sort of strategy that we've seen with cards like Shadow Rider Calyrex. We're trying to swarm a ton of energy into play with Darkrai VSTAR and hopefully hit for large amounts of damage, even being able to one-shot a lot of Pokemon in the format. And with the game generally trending away from VMAXs in favor of VSTARs, that's only going to bode better for this card as time goes on, as the total HP of most VSTARs is going to be a lot lower than that of VMAXs. But then we also have the VSTAR power on Darkrai, which definitely should not be slept on. This is kind of like the inverse of what we've seen on Arceus VSTAR. This one allows you to get 2 item cards from your discard back into your hand. So yeah, that does allow you to get things back like Quick Balls and Ultra Balls, but Dark Pokemon are getting a very important item reprint in this set in the form of Dark Patch, and being able to have potentially 6 copies of Dark Patch thanks to this ability is absolutely insane. But unlike cards like Shadow Rider Calyrex, Darkrai does need the help from other cards to be able to get its energy into play. The first one's going to be 2 copies of Galarian Moltres V for that great Dire Flame Wings ability. We can get a dark energy from discard and attach it to Galarian Moltres. Getting energy in the discard is pretty easy for this deck, so effectively every turn that this is in play, it's adding an additional 30 damage, just snowballing turn after turn as long as this thing stays in play. However, we are also playing 2 copies of the other Galarian Moltres. It has that Malevolent Charge ability that whenever we bench it, allows you to attach 2 dark energies from hand to Galarian Moltres. And Galarian Moltres honestly is a pretty solid backup attacker in the late game too. Its attack for 2 Darkened Colorist is 20 plus 50 more for every prize card your opponent has taken. But that's not the only single prize attacker we have. We also have 1 copy of Hoopa back from Darkness Ablaze. This is a card that I really like specifically if you find yourself going second, because Hoopa has that Assault Gate attack for a dark energy. It does 90 if Hoopa was on your bench and became your active Pokemon. Usually your first turn or so with this deck, you're not hitting for a ton with Darkrai VSTAR, and being able to get in a chip damage of 90 is actually a pretty significant amount and will help set up your math for your Darkrai VSTAR to come in and finish that KO on the following turn. And the last single prize Pokemon we have in this list is going to be 1 copy of the brand new Radiant Greninja. So if this is one of these new Radiant cards, you can only have 1 of them in your entire deck, and the ability on this thing is pretty nuts and synergizes perfectly with this deck. Once during your turn, you can discard an energy from your hand and draw 2 cards. So this is perfect. We can pitch away energy to power up our Galarian Moltres or to use something like Dark Patch. And every turn, just having a free draw 2 essentially on our board is just an amazing ability to have. Up next from there, we do have a copy of Crobat V. For that Dark Acid ability, we can bench it, draw 6 cards, but we also have another multi-prize support Pokemon. As you would expect, we have 1 copy of Lumineon V, just to make sure we can search a supporter out of our deck whenever we bench it. Heading on over to our trainer cards, we have 4 copies of Professor's Research. Definitely, I think, the best draw supporter for a deck like this. We discard our hand and draw 7. Obviously, Research is a super strong supporter just in general, but we are, of course, a deck that does want cards in the discard. And the only other supporter we're running in the entire deck is just going to be 3 copies of Boss's Orders, just to be able to switch our opponents active with one of their bench Pokemon. So yes, I am aware this supporter line is going to look really weird for the moment, but make sure to watch all the way through. Between the Radiant Greninja and some of the other new cards that we're playing in this deck, drawing cards, I promise, will not be an issue. But for our stadium card of choice, we just have 2 copies of Training Court. This will allow us to get an energy back from discard into our hand. And there's just such a natural good synergy between this and so many other cards in our deck. We can discard energy with Radiant Greninja to draw cards, but then if we still need an attachment for turn, we can always get that back to our hand, slap it down on a Darkrai or whatever it might be. But I will say, in my experience so far, Darkrai VSTAR is a deck that does get hurt by Paths to the Peak pretty badly. And going forward, I would not mind finding space for potentially a third stadium to maybe help with that a little bit. So of course, maybe a third training court, but also in the article I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I do go over some of my other top choices for some of the other stadium cards you could consider. But going into our items, and there are a good bit, we have 4 copies of the new trekking shoes. This is going to be the other way we are offsetting our lack of a lot of draw supporters. It's a new item where you get to look at the top card of your deck, you can put that in your hand, or you can discard it and draw the next card. This was actually not in some of my earlier drafts of the deck, but as soon as I tested it out, I immediately got hooked on it. Being able to pitch away dark energies more easily with this is great, and just allows for some insane reach on certain turns. Like in a single turn, you can research, use Radiant Greninja, Crobat V, and potentially up to 4 of these. And one thing I really do like about these two is that you can retrieve them with Darkrai VSTAR. Darkrai VSTAR cannot get a research back out of discard, but if your hand is a little bit clunked up and you need a way at drawing cards, you can grab 2 of these bad boys back and hopefully dig yourself out of a dead hand. But we do need some ways at searching out our Pokemon. We have 4 copies of Quick Ball in the deck, as well as 4 copies of Ultra Ball. Quick Ball, of course, being there to grab our basic Pokemon, and then with Ultra Ball forces us to discard 1 more card than Quick Ball does, but we get any Pokemon. We actually don't care about the discard effect. In fact, it helps our deck since we want Dark Energy in the discard pile anyways. But the next card is certainly an important one. That's going to be 4 copies of Dark Patch, which is coming back into the game with the release of Astral Radiance. This is by far, I think, one of the best items we've actually seen in the history of the game, and definitely is going to be a big boost for Dark Pokemon going forward. It allows you to attach a Dark Energy out of discard to one of your benched Dark Pokemon. So between these and both of the different Galarian Moltres cards, we have tons of ways at buffing our damage. But even on top of that, to go along with that, we have 2 copies of Choice Belt to further increase our damage output by 30 against Pokemon V. We also have 2 copies of Air Balloon as our other Pokemon tool that we're playing, just to reduce our retreat cost by 2. Dark Patch, of course, is a card that does only work on bench Pokemon, so we do need ways at being able to easily retreat once we're ready to attack to the Pokemon that we are accelerating energy onto. That being said, we are also playing 1 copy of Switch in the deck, just to, of course, switch her active with one of our bench Pokemon, as well as a copy of Escape Rope, which also forces our opponent to switch in the process. And to round out our trainer cards, we have 1 copy of Ordinary Rod to get back 2 Pokemon and or 2 basic energy. You know, we are turboing through our deck. We don't have any shuffle draw effects with discard effects like Research and Trekking Shoes and Ultra Ball. And every now and again, there are some Pokemon that do wind up being collateral damage along the way, and being able to get this back definitely can be useful. And then to round out our deck list, we have 13 copies of Dark Energy in total. It is a lot, but you do have to remember we're trying to get these things in the discard ASAP, and we basically always want an out to being able to use Radiant Greninja's ability as long as it's on our board, and playing a high count of basic energy definitely helps ensure that. So that's where I'm at right now with Darkrai VSTAR, and I've got to say this list has been feeling really solid in my testing so far. This list I'm using right now doesn't have a whole lot in the way of tech cards, but it definitely makes up for that in the sheer amount of speed and consistency cards that we have to get up and running. But I definitely want to hear from you guys. Sound off down below in the comment section. What do you guys think about this Darkrai VSTAR deck? Are there any other directions you would want to take? Let me know your full thoughts down below. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, if you guys are still hungry for some more Darkrai content, like I said, I will have a link in the description to the bonus article I dropped on Patreon detailing some additional deck building options as well as a bonus list for Darkrai. Or on the flip side, if you want another way at showing your support, you can always just pick up some merch at rarecandytcg.com. Links to everything will be down below in the description. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.